All right, so good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Cherry Kubota. I'm Ohio State professor in Controlled Environment Agriculture, and welcome to the Vegetable Grafting webinar. Today we will have a presentation from Richard Hassell, Clemson University. Before introducing him, I like to introduce a little bit of background and the future schedule of our webinar. So we will be doing two more webinars before summer starts. April, Tony Kainas is going to give a presentation focusing on management of disease during, I believe, propagation methods, and then also in the field. And then also May 14th, Cary River, Kansas State, is going to give a presentation on small acreage and high tonal tomato growers applications of grafting. So we are looking forward to those upcoming webinars. And then also I would like to welcome any suggestions or requests regarding a seminar, webinar topics. I'm thinking maybe someone from industry, propagator or users can give presentation if they are interested. So I welcome any suggestions for that. So, and then also we are working really hard to organize this International Vegetable Grafting Symposium coming up in July. So if you are interested, please look up from our website, and information is there. So with that, today's speaker is Richard Hassell. The title is Vegetable Grafting, Making It Affordable and Beneficial to U.S. Growers. And let me stop sharing my screen so that Richard can start sharing. And while Richard is sharing screen, are you okay, Richard?
Yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
we're all set to go.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and share the screen. While he's doing that, let me introduce Dr. Richard Hassell. He's a professor of vegetable physiology, and then also he's a vegetable extension specialist. Clemson University Coastal Research and Extension Center. And that center is located in Charleston, South Carolina. He got PhD from the Ohio State University and has been many years of experience as an extension specialist and then also physiologist working on varieties of vegetables, but probably best known as cucurbit physiologist. So Richard, if you can start presentation mode, that would be perfect.
All right, thank you very much for this opportunity. We're going to talk to you a little bit about today about making grafting affordable and beneficial to our growers in here in the U.S. or anybody that is interested in doing grafting. I think it's important that, and Sherry, does everybody see everything we need to right now?
Yes,
okay.
Beautiful.
I think one of the things that we need to point out is where grafting has been going on in the world, and basically some interesting facts to present first. And I just show you this slide just to show you where grafting is originated from. It's basically from Asia and Europe regions. Just to give you some idea on statistics as far as comparisons of Asia and Europe, just to give you, I just have the statistics on cucurbits here, but I wanted to share with you just some interesting facts. For example, watermelons in Korea, 100% of them are grafted. Japan, 100%. China, over 50% now because of some additional problems there. If you look at Europe's 50%. But if you look at the bottom here of grafting history, Korea and Japan and Taiwan Been doing it for Korea for 30 or 40 years, Japan 50 or 60 years, Taiwan 15 to 20 years. So the question that you ask yourself, and then in Europe, between 15 and 20 years, they've been doing grafting. So the question is, why haven't we in the US caught on to grafting? Why hasn't it been a major emphasis here in the United States? First of all, we've had a lot of land to rotate to. When a grower runs into a problem with a soil-borne disease, he's able to rotate, share ground with the neighbor, and has been able to rotate out of that certain area. Land rotation now is becoming minimal. Land available without any chance of soil-borne diseases is becoming less and less common. We've had the use of soil fumigants. Especially for many years, we had the use of methyl bromide. We still have a number of soil fumigants that we're allowed to use, but they're becoming additionally very expensive. And along with that, a lot of government regulations. They're very dangerous, soil fumigants are, and the liability and the lawsuits associated with fumigants has now become a major concern with growers. And so that now is becoming less and less attractive to growers. And the main reason that we haven't got into the grafting is due to grafting costs. And that's a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today, is the cost of grafting and what we can do to improve upon that, and what we can do to alter that somewhat so that we can make it affordable here in the US to be competitive in the grafting market. If you were to purchase grafted plants, especially watermelon grafted plants here in the US, they would cost you basically about $1.30 a piece. That's about a 5 times increase over conventional transplants in the US. And so that is a big concern for many growers. Although if you look at the overall cost of production, the cost of transplants is minimal as far as the overall costs of, say, watermelon production or tomatoes or pepper production. The actual cost of transplants is minimal compared to what else is involved. Having said that, though, the biggest problems with grafting is labor. In the US, our labor situation is very tight. Labor is very expensive here in the US. Farmers are having to pay a minimum of $15 an hour, $12 to $15 an hour to get workers, if they're able to get workers. Labor problems on the US farms is becoming very, very critical. And getting labor, additional labor to do grafting is something that is not talked about much because of the cost of labor. So the labor is really, there's nothing we can do about that. The cost involved in making labor available to us for grafting is something that we can't avoid. Materials involved. You have twice as much materials. You have to buy rootstocks material as well as your scion material or your top growth, whatever you want to call it. The tomatoes or peppers that you desire, or the watermelons or cantaloupes or cucumbers that you want. You're going to have to purchase additional to those rootstock material. If you're looking at rootstocks for tomatoes, eggplants, peppers that you're going to graft, those rootstocks are very expensive, as many as you had as you look at the seed catalogs. Rootstock material for watermelons, the lagenaria, the interspecific squash or the wild melons is not all that expensive, but it is an additional cost. So you need to be aware of those two things that we really have no control over. Things that you're going to need for materials to do grafting. You're going to need a grafting room. This can be any room besides in a greenhouse. You don't want to graft inside the greenhouse itself. Those are usually very, very hot or fluctuating in temperatures. You need to have a room that is relatively cool, 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit is probably your ideal temperature for grafting in a grafting room. And then you need to have tables set up. This is just an example of a table setup that we saw in Japan. And if you'll notice that those tables, it's hard to fit your legs under. That's because those people doing the grafting have very short legs and are very short people. So these tables are set up for them. So you need to have somewhere where your grafters can sit, relax, in an environment which is steady. You also need to move those plants in that you're going to use for grafting into that room the night before. This is important because those plants need to have those stomates on the leaves, the functioning part of the leaf closed, so that there's not a lot of transpiration going on by the plants. So when you cut them and use for grafting, those plants don't wilt immediately. So that's the big reason why you want a room such as this. Then you're going to need grafting supplies. You're going to need grafting clips. If you're doing tomatoes, eggplants, peppers grafting, you can make your own clips. Dr. Matt Kleinhans at Ohio State University has come up with a method, and he'd be glad to share that with you, of making his own type of clips. You can make those type of clips out of a lot of materials that's available to us at very minimal cost that work very good for tomatoes and eggplants and peppers. But if you're looking at using cucurbit grafting, you're going to have to buy those clips. And you can go on to the internet and look at supplies for grafting clips, type in grafting clips, and you can come up with various sources that are available here in the US where you can buy various sizes of grafting clips for cucurbit grafting, whether you're doing cantaloupes, watermelons, cucumbers. Then you're going to need a supply of razor blades. These are just standard, oops, excuse me, let me back up. You're going to need just a supply of razor blades. This is a double-edged razor blade here. You can bust those in two, and you can use either side. I personally just as soon use the one-inch razor blades. You can buy those at any department stores. They have a lot of those available for commercial supplies for painters, so you can buy hundreds of those at a time. They're not all that expensive to buy. Then you need to have a water bottle or a bottle with disinfectant. If you're going to be doing tomatoes or eggplants or pepper grafting, you're going to need a supply of a disinfectant in a spray bottle where you can disinfect these razor blades on a regular basis when you're doing the grafting. If you're doing grafting with cucurbits, it's best to sterilize those, but the sterilization process doesn't need to be as often or as regular as you do with the tomato grafting. But it's always wise to have a water bottle also available. Depends on the speed of your grafters, so that you can mist your plants after you're done with the tray of grafting, or how you have that set up. So you have a way of spraying those plants so they don't lose their rigidity or their viability. They still are standing up straight. after you begin the grafting process. So these supplies, you need to have those readily available to you. And it's not something that, especially with clips, that you can, if you ran short, just going out and buying those. You need to have those readily available to you. So having a room, having these supplies is the first thing that you need to understand that you need to have for doing grafting. You also need to have a healing chamber. Now you can have a very sophisticated healing chamber as you see here, or you can have it a very primitive ones that like the ones that we saw when we were over in Japan. And basically this is just inside of a greenhouse. And this shows you just where they're putting the trays. They're covering it over with a blanket type thing. Continue over with shade cloth over to even, they put them actually in the dark. So very little light is needed for a healing process, and we'll go into that in just a little later. But these are just with wire hoops, plastic, but you need to have a way of keeping the humidity up. Humidity is very, very important for a healing chamber. Temperatures, you can have extremely high temperatures in grafting, but you need to have a way of keeping that humidity up to at least 90% humidity to begin your grafting process. And so you need to have a way of putting water. Very expensive toothpicks, because regular toothpicks don't last very long in this because they water absorbed, and you need something that's sharp. But you can buy some at some of the Oriental food markets. You can buy some toothpicks that are made from harder wood, and they'll last you a while. But this is generally made with a toothpick, or I've seen some growers use a very, very small drill bit to go between it. But actually you're going to be doing this on the side here, and what it's going to do is it's going to poke through here, and it's going to come out the side here a little bit. Then you're going to simply insert this down through the hole down here through, and this tip of your scion material is going to be coming out of the side here just a little. It generally will stick once you put it in there. If not, you can put a clip on this, but what the real good growers don't have to use any clips with this. Okay, but this method then has to be put back in the healing chamber. So both the cotyledon method and the hole insertion method need a healing chamber approach for this. So that you can eliminate the need for a grafting clip if you're able to do this graft. Now the approach graft. This is what I call the beginning method. If you're a beginning method and you want to get into grafting watermelons, cantaloupes, or cucumbers, this is the method that is used quite often in Mexico. And this you do not need a healing chamber for. Dr. Gilbert Miller here at Clemson University is very good at this grafting method. So if you want to talk to somebody about this, he has mastered that very good, and his method has worked very good for him. But here you have your rootstock material. You're going to make a cut below. Here's the cotyledon leaves. You're going to make a cut, not all the way through. You're going to make a 30-degree cut as well here at an angle. Then you're with your scion material. You're going to have an upward cut. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bring this one and this one together by inserting this into that area right here. Then these two are going to be put into a bigger cell itself. And then you're going to come on a week later and you're going to cut the rootstock top off of here. So you're going to, oops. Let me back up one. So what you're going to do is you're going to be trimming that off. Then you're going to wait another week and you're going to come down below, and then you're going to cut those roots off of your scion material roots, and therefore you're going to have your rootstock rooting as well as your scion stem connected. And you're going to wrap this area with a rubber band or a piece of aluminum foil, and this will naturally heal this together while the supporting of both these roots. But this takes a lot of space within your greenhouse. That's why it's not commonly used, because you're going to have to grow both your rootstocks and your scion material in large enough cells, and then you're going to bring them together and have to put them again into an additional cell, which is generally a lot larger. And but then this method does not need a healing chamber, and it's a very successful graft. Now let's talk a minute about what you're doing when you're grafting. You're basically taking your scion material and healing it, putting it up against a rootstock material after you've made your cut, and you're trying to match up what they call vascular bundles. You're trying to match up these vascular bundles. In watermelons, cantaloupes, and cucumbers, there's basically 6 vascular bundles that you're trying to match up. And so when you put those two together, you're trying to match that area up so it heals. That's very important. This just shows you a cross section of one of the rootstock materials, showing how grafting actually heals and takes part.
Hi, Richard.
Yes.
You are out of the presentation mode.
Oh, I am?
Yeah, so that maybe you can tap on the from current slide next to the from the beginning icon.
Oh, let me see here, Sherry.
Yeah, not
Okay,
from the beginning. Yeah,
You're
but
done?
it's you're back. But okay, you can do that.
Let me do that real quick.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No. I should have noticed earlier.
Okay, so let's talk about rootstocks for just a minute. Rootstocks are very crucial here in the U.S. You need to find a rootstock that handles the situation in your area. Okay, so you need to know what the disease is in your soil that you're having a hard time growing plants in. And so then you need to go to the website, our cucurbit website that we have developed as a team, to find out which rootstock works the best for your particular situation, especially if you're going to be doing tomatoes or peppers or eggplants. You need to look at that website to see which rootstock is best at combating that soil-borne disease. Choosing the right rootstock is key to being a successful grafting. Not all rootstocks are equal in their resistance to the soil-borne diseases. So keep that in mind as you go forth and you want to learn how to graft. Go at grafting for that reason. Main reason is to combat that soil-borne disease that you're faced with. This just shows you a list of rootstocks in the cucurbit section. There's basically 3 types of rootstocks that are used in cucurbit grafting. There's the lagenaria, which is a bottle gourd rootstock. There is a wild watermelon or a wild melon for actually cantaloupes that you can use. And then there's the interspecific hybrid squash rootstock that I'm showing you right here. That is very important that you understand. You choose a rootstock. These rootstocks over the years have been selected for their resistance to fusarium, which is a major problem in cucurbits, in a soil-borne disease. So it's important that you pick the rootstock that's resistant to the disease that you're faced with. Now, in the interspecific crosses here, there's a lot of different types of rootstocks. Mainly all of these came out of Korea and Japan. They're all Shintosa related. They're all interspecific hybrid squash. There's a squash between, they're a cross between a butternut type squash and an acorn type squash. They're very, very resistant to fusarium, but the resistance is these interspecific hybrids just do not get the disease. So it's not a question of resistance, it's just that they don't get it. Same with the lagenaria or the bottled gourd, that they also are very resistant to fusarium. But if you have a problem with root knot nematode in your field, then these rootstocks are very, very susceptible to root knot nematode. And so you need to watch out if you have other soil-borne diseases, especially root knot nematode, in that you need to select something that is resistant, like a wild watermelon or a wild melon. This happens to be one of the wild watermelons that we've tested. It also has resistance to fusarium. It also has resistance to root knot nematode. One thing that we're proud of, and I'll just briefly mention, is that we've developed the first ever rootstock in the US. It's and we're calling it Carolina Strongback. It's a Citroides crosses. It's a wild watermelon rootstock. And the reason I'm showing you this is this just happens to be where we've tested it in Hawaii, where they have both root knot nematode and fusarium. And you'll notice that this is non-grafted here. Well, yeah, non-grafted right here at the front, and these are all grafted onto our rootstock here. And so this rootstock has both resistance to nematodes as well as fusarium, all races of fusarium that we've tested so far. This just shows you a field that we've tested in South Carolina. This field was abandoned by the grower because of fusarium. It wasn't able to grow any cucurbits at all in this field this last year. This is what watermelons look like on that field. This was specifically field that has high abundance of root knot nematode as well as fusarium. Now, grafting, putting on a rootstock also affects your top growth, also affects what you're trying to grow, whether it be a tomato or a watermelon, for example. And it'll affect the quality of your fruit. One thing I wanted to show you by here is grafting affects how the plant reacts when it's used for fresh cut. So Dr. Penny Perkins at NC State's done a number of studies that have really shown some real promise for grafting. For grafting with a grower, the field actually holds up to 2 weeks when the plants are ready. So when the watermelons are ready in the field, those plants will hold without becoming stringy or characteristics of an old watermelon. They won't show that. They'll hold that firmness up to 2 weeks. Also, the lycopene within the fruit of these watermelons is also higher, which is a good cancer preventive agent. So that's two real pluses. Also, the fruit on a watermelon is much firmer. So you don't have a lot of drip loss when you're looking at fresh cut. When you're cutting a watermelon, you're cutting into the cells, and you're cutting open the cells. And so what happens is they will leak. And so if you've been in buying fresh cut, they always seem to elevate those so that those aren't sitting in the fluids of the watermelon. But the grafted fruits seem to have less ability to break down. They're much firmer and they hold up longer in the grocery store shelf. So you'll notice that difference, but you will get an effect. Something's going along, something's happening between the roots of whatever you're grafted onto and actually to the top or what you desire, it will affect your final product that you're looking at. Next, I want to talk to you about a new area of growth that we're exploring and being very much interested in, and that is the grow rooms. You can build grow rooms. You can actually, you don't need a greenhouse to grow your plants. With grafted plants, you need to have your scion material at an ideal stage for grafting, as well as your rootstock material at a desired stage of grafting. And a lot of times, those aren't the same. And within a greenhouse, you're still affected by the environment outside the greenhouse. Whether it's cold or hot, whether it's cloudy or it's sunny outside will affect how your plants are growing inside your greenhouse. If you build your own grow room, you can control that temperature. You can control the light. These are just simple rooms that we built here at the station, where we have worked out a system, and I'll show you that briefly because we're getting short on time. I just wanted to show you these in the fact that these are simply lights, grow lights now that are very inexpensive to buy. They're all LEDs. They don't put off any heat whatsoever. And these racks that I have here were just purchased actually at the Michigan Vegetable Growers Show. I purchased those because I thought these would be ideal racks for growing transplants. And the room that you see here is just a reefer truck that we have a lot of here on the loading docks, ships, containers that came in. These are just reefers that have been used to ship overseas that we've modified. They're very well insulated and can be used as a grow room. We put heaters in these and airflow. If you'll notice on these racks, as you can see here, a series of fans that are just blowing air across the area here where we're growing plants. And we've been able to now develop a cookbook that shows you, for example, like this happens to be a seedless watermelon. And so what we're working on is coming up with a temperature at a temperature that we're looking at, as well as the amount of light that we're given to that, the duration of light, which is down here, as to the amount of light that we have, continuous light, whether it's 18 or 21 or 24 hours of light at a certain temperature, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, and 90, we've been able to look how the plants grow. So in looking at the seedless watermelons, we've been able to establish this is the ideal line. This red line across here is the ideal line that we found for growing what we want for the hypocotyl length, the stem length. Then we look at the stem diameter, the hypocotyl diameter of this at the same thing. And so we're looking at wanting something that's very thick. The thicker the better, because that we can match it up much better onto the rootstock material. Then this is Carolina Strongback, which is our wild watermelon, looking at the rootstock material at the various temperatures. And you'll notice that we wanted at an additional height, not as short as what we saw with the scion material, but with the rootstock material, we wanted it a little taller, so that when we graft and then when we go out to the plant, that we actually do not bury that stem or hypocotyl, so it won't reroot. So we're looking at this ideal temperature. So this ideal length. So you can see the effects of the light duration, and therefore we've able to develop a cookbook. This is the diameter that we're looking at, and this is the diameter, the ideal diameter we want for the rootstock material. This just shows you, gives you an idea of what's coming. The reason that we're looking at this type of a situation here with the grow room is because these are very cheap. Don't require a lot of money and a lot of electricity to build. And there's no use heating an entire greenhouse for rootstocks and scion material that you're not going to be growing for a very long time. You're wasting a lot of airspace up above. You're heating an area, and then it's still going to have a lot of variations in how it does. And so if you can, and so for grafting material, you need to produce that the same each time for the best quality transplant that you can produce. And that's key to grafting. Whatever you do, you want to make sure that you're consistent in that. And so that's the reason for these grow rooms. Dr. Hernandez at NC State has been working on this same type of thing with tomatoes and peppers and eggplants, only he's working on injecting CO2 within these chambers to help develop a good characteristics to a rootstock and scion material. But all these methods, these aren't expensive. These are a lot cheaper than building a greenhouse or having a greenhouse. You can actually do these in a room that you might have developed by yourself. You can adapt these and you can put them in racks and stack them. What you see here is the PVC pipes that we use for watering on all our racks. And these are simply time clocks for the lights that we just bought at the electrical supply store. The water lines flood this area, and so we're actually watering, so the plants never receive any moisture up on top, so we have less chance of disease problems onto the foliage. And so within this controlled environment here, we can actually control disease problems. We can actually control the height and length and of the rootstock and scion material, producing plants that are ideal for each stage. So what did I want to conclude with? We've been very much supported by 2 SCRI grants that have been given by the federal government to push to support grafting technology in the US so that we can be major players in the US market. Also, one of the seed companies that's been a real supporter of our grafting work here as far as cucurbits goes is Syngenta Vegetable Seeds, the Full Count program, because they push a lot of transplants and they're very much interested in grafting. Grafting supplies, grafting can be done commercially. We have a number of commercial operations here in the US that can do that grafting for you now. So if you have large acreage and you don't want to do the grafting yourself, you can purchase grafted plants. But they're looking at a lot of this new technology that we've developed also. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions that anybody might have, and I'll get rid of this.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Hassell. It was really interesting and informative, including introduction to grafting methods and some other keys. And your chamber looks really nice.
Thanks, Sherry. It works out very well, and
yeah,
it's actually just a reefer that we bought off the coast.
Okay,
so
great.
It's very easy to convert those over.
Good. All right, so this is your time, audience, to ask questions or comments. You can either use your microphone by clicking unmute icon lower left, or you can use chat area if you wish that way. But sometimes chat area is not really dynamic. But I see first question in the chat area. What disinfectant is best for grafting, Richard? What kind of disinfectant solution?
What now?
Sterilization solution.
Oh, sterilization
Yeah,
solution
yeah.
is an ethanol alcohol type of dip for the razor blades. Works out a 70% solution, works best for those.
Okay. Any other questions? Let me go back to just camera. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Thanks for the
और
presentation.
पूछ रहा
It's really informative. I was wondering, what's the best source to cite when we're talking about percentage of grafted vegetable crops on the international scale?
Uh-huh. What's the question now?
So what's the best source to cite for information regarding the percentage of cucurbits and solanaceous crops that are grafted on the international scale for Japan and Korea, for example?
Those sites actually I got from when I visited Korea. And so I got those from a scientist over there. So I'm not sure where I would get those. Do you know, Sherry, where you might?
Yeah, so different countries have different statistics, but those are usually in their own languages, so it's very difficult to pull the information. For example, I know in Japan they do a nationwide survey, and they know exactly how much percentage of grafted plants in terms of acreage of different crops. We don't do that in US, and I don't know if they do that in Europe. So
Okay, yeah, because when I've talked to people about grafting who aren't aware of it in the US, I always say it's close to 100%, but I don't have a source to cite for that.
Yeah. US situation, I think greenhouse tomato is the highest percentage grafting is used.
Right.
Cucurbit is still very fast growing, but still not big number yet, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, but it's potentially it's big because that's what we have seen in other countries, European countries and Asian countries.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right. So second question from the list. Are watermelon growers in Southeast US using grafted plants commercially? I guess related question.
Yes, there are. I'll repeat that question. Southeast, are watermelon growers using these? Are using grafted plants? The answer is yes. This year there will be a lot of grafted plants being put out, especially in Florida and South Carolina, North Carolina, and up into Virginia, as well as Pennsylvania.
All right. So, Mohammed Azhar Nawaz, do you have a question? I see your hand in the chat area or participant area, and then your microphone is on. I guess your microphone is not well connected, so I'm gonna.
Thank you for your attention.
No, we can't hear you, so I'm gonna mute.
Richard for delivering such a nice. Hello.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Maybe you can type your question in the chat area instead, and then your microphone was not really transmitting quality sound. So I go down the list again, but meanwhile, if someone wanna ask questions, go ahead and use your microphone. So do you have plans available online for a growth chamber similar to the one you had in the photo towards the end of the slideshow? Do you have plans available online for a growth chamber similar to the one? I guess the question is the growth chamber available?
Is the growth chamber available?
Yeah,
Not commercially, no. That's just one that we build ourselves.
right. So there is a turnkey system. Sorry, there is a turnkey system available for more like a leafy green crop production. That is a very expensive one. I think the 40 feet shipping container type cost 100,000 US dollars, but that's for a much higher light intensity. But if you can do that by yourself, building your own is probably the low cost, Richard. Do you think?
Right.
Yeah.
Building your own is probably the way you're going to want to go.
Right.
And
Because
you can build them very cheaply.
yeah, because you have just AC unit or maybe heating.
We just have an AC unit for heating and air conditioning in there, and those containers are very well insulated.
Right.
So it doesn't take much to heat them or cool them. That's the advantage of those shipping containers. They're very cheap, but they're also extremely well made.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you are just really looking good. Right. Okay. So the next one, what level of percent infestation of fusarium and root knot nematode does it take to pay for the cost of grafting? Wow, that's a hard question.
Yeah, that's a very hard question to ask. You know, if you're in a situation like I showed you with the picture from Hawaii, they have no other choice. It's either fusarium will move rather quickly. Once you get fusarium in your field, the following year, it's just going to get worse. And then there's no way that you can basically, at this time that I know of, can reduce fusarium. Once you have it in a field, it's not going to go away. There's too many weed hosts that keep it going. And so there's right now, there's no way of eliminating it. So it basically is I guess you'd look at it in the fact that you would say, well, with the cost that you have in a field of watermelon, where's your break-even point? And if you fall below that break-even point, then you're going to be grafting if you want to keep going in that field or watermelon production. If you're not making it because of the soil-borne diseases in a particular field, then you really don't have a choice. Unless you have other land that you can rotate to.
Right. So next question, I think that's from Mohammed. Thank you for writing up. Carolina Strongback is a hybrid or open pollinated rootstock.
No, it's not a hybrid. It's an OP.
Okay.
It's a cross between, it was initially a cross between two lines that Dr. Pat Wechter had found that contain multiple sites of resistance to fusarium. He made the initial cross, and it's taken us about 10 years to develop that to the point where it's now released, and that Syngenta has picked that up and have seed available this year for testing, and then next year they hope to have it commercially available.
That's wonderful. That's very wonderful.
So it is an OP, but it's just been back crossed from that point, so it's still an OP.
Yeah.
It's actually to stage, I think it's stage 8 to 10 now, F8 or F10.
Okay. That's good. So that means that this seed cost is likely lower than the other like interspecific hybrid type of rootstock, you think?
Well, the interspecific hybrid rootstocks, when they develop that seed, the problems they have with that is it doesn't set fruit till node 10 or 11, which means that plant is going to be out in the field for an awful long time. And so they have constant problems with disease problems coming into those fields and keeping those fields alive to produce that seed. With Carolina Strongback, it produces on a lot of seed within the fruit that we have set on the fruit. So that's going to make it quicker, and those fruit produce an abundance of seeds, so makes it very well as a rootstock.
That's great. So hopefully the seed cost is way lower.
So it should be lower,
Great.
but you never know.
Yeah, I understand. All right. The last one I see in the chat area, from your diagram of cross section of grafted plant, does the grafting method, such as cleft, point insertion, hole insertion, approach graft, does the grafting method change the look of the cross section?
Yes, that cross section, it will become very calloused. It will depends on the rootstock that you're grafting on. The Carolina Strongback isn't that much of a grafting union. You'll always notice it, but it's not that big. If you're grafted onto an interspecific, it will get huge. Same with the Lagenaria. That graft union will be a very, very thick stem.
All right. Good. Wonderful. Anyone has a burning question, quick question right now? If not, I really want to thank Richard Hassell, Dr. Richard Hassell again for excellent presentation. It's very educational and informative, and also including some of the innovations he has worked on. Thank you so much, Richard.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for attending and listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, if things go along, feel free to give me a call.
Great. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining in the webinar. And then see you in a month or so. Thank you.
Bye-bye.